The university cafe was a whirlwind of activity, as students and faculty rushed about between classes. The air smelled like freshly brewed coffee, stale books, and paper napkins from breakfast leftovers. Aelith val'Doreen pushed open the door to find herself immediately lost in the chaotic symphony playing around her. Whispers, laughter, arguments, sighs. It was as if a million voices screamed at once inside her head. She could feel the exhaustion wash over her face like cold water. She had been searching for something silent here on Earth since dawn. The cafe's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an artificial glow that made everything look bleached and flat. Circular tables, dotted with small clusters of people huddled closely together, seemed to form islands in a sea of noise. Aelith's lavender skin appeared, even more pale, under the harsh light as she scanned for solitude. She longed for just one corner where her thoughts could be quiet, away from this storm of other minds. She saw them first, books scattered across the wooden table at the far back corner near the window. The gentle hum of someone else's concentration was the only thing that didn't deafen her senses in this place. Aelith moved through the crowd with a grace reminiscent of flowing water, navigating around tables and chairs as if she hadn't even touched them. Daniel Park looked up from his book when he felt eyes on him, but before he could fully focus, those piercing silver orbs were fixed upon him instead. It was strange no one ever really noticed Daniel in this place, kept to himself most days, preferring the quiet company of old texts and scientific journals over chattering humans who rarely had anything meaningful to say. Aelith's eyes flicked around the room once more before settling back on his face. She approached with a practiced elegance that spoke volumes about her training as Doreen royalty. There was something in those silver Isaacs, caution, relief, and perhaps even hope. "Please," Aelith said softly but firmly, breaking through Daniel's daze. Her voice was melodic and clear like running water, contrasting sharply against the usual cacophony of sound inside her head. "Just let me sit here." Daniel blinked in surprise, taken aback by both her unexpected appearance and request. But there was an air about her that begged for understanding. She seemed to radiate a kindred spirit with his own quiet solitude. Without another word or hesitation, he nodded, gesturing toward the empty seat across from him. "Of course," Daniel replied, turning back to his book almost immediately after giving permission. The pages crinkled softly as he flipped through them again, eyes scanning lines of text that made no sense out loud but provided solace nonetheless. Aelith's shoulders visibly relaxed upon sitting down. Her presence was stark and beautiful against the cluttered backdrop around her. She leaned back into the chair with an audible sigh, allowing herself a rare moment to simply be away from the constant barrage inside her mind. It was quiet now, not perfectly silent by any means. Faint murmur of conversations continued in the distance, but much closer than before for Aelith's sensitive ears and telepathic nature. She breathed deeply through her nose, savoring this unusual solitude that Daniel offered without question or inquiry about why she needed it so badly. Daniel hummed along with some notes scribbled on his notebook page, while continuing to read intently, occasionally pausing to scratch down additional thoughts from his mind's eye vision of theoretical physics equations. Each tick-tock second stretched into infinity for Aelith as the peace surrounding her became more tangible than air itself. She didn't explain further. Daniel didn't ask about it either. There was no need or desire in this moment for any other explanation beyond allowing each other presence without needing to fill up silence with words that would only disrupt what they both shared, now just two beings quietly existing within one another's space on Earth's campus. And then, as suddenly and perfectly as her arrival had been earlier, Aelith exhaled softly, adding contentment radiating off of her like warmth from the sun. This was enough for them both in this strange new world they'd found together beneath humankind's bustling skies, over their shared university cafe haven of peace amidst chaos. A&D Chapter 2 Library. Daniel's fingers paused mid-air as he reached for another book from the towering shelf before him. Aelith stood just a few feet away, her elegant figure framed by the soft glow of library lights filtering through stacks of books and half-filled study carrels. He watched silently, aware that she was searching for something different than what most people sought in this quiet sanctuary. "Aelith," Daniel said softly, as he turned to face her fully, setting his book aside on a nearby table, where it rested with the others piled high next to an open laptop and notes scattered haphazard. "Ardowell, why? Is everything okay?" She looked up at him, silver eyes wide but calm, offering a small nod in response before gesturing toward one of the tables nearby where he often sat alone during long hours spent researching for his thesis. "Just looking," Aelith murmured softly, her voice almost melodic against the soft hum of library conversations. For somewhere quiet, her gaze flickered towards Daniel, and then away again, as if suddenly self-conscious about admitting it aloud to a stranger. The university's main library was vast, with high ceilings that echoed sounds down long aisles lined by towering bookcases filled from floor to ceiling. The air smelled of old paper and worn leather bindings, mixed with the faint scent of pine cleaners used for daily maintenance on floors and tables alike. A few groups huddled together in clusters around carrels or at round study tables, their conversations barely audible over the steady hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Daniel's eyes followed her gaze briefly before he sighed softly, understanding her need without needing to be told more explicitly than what she had already shared so directly with him. For a moment, he gestured toward one corner across from where they usually sat in his preferred cafe nook, but less occupied here within this hallowed hall. "Over there?" Daniel asked, pointing towards the designated quiet zone at the back of the library near large windows looking out onto campus trees and greenery outside. Aelith's shoulders relaxed slightly more as she nodded appreciatively. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice carrying only a hint of gratitude but also weariness. She began to move in that direction without another word, walking with an almost hypnotic grace through the aisles between rows and rows of books. Daniel trailed behind quietly, after ensuring he had nothing more pressing on his current research task list for now. There was no point pushing ahead if she needed some measure of peace here amidst human society's overwhelming noise levels. The library felt quieter compared to most places due to its hushed rules enforced by strict signage, but Aelith's presence made it even stiller somehow. Once they arrived at the designated quiet zone, small section tucked away off main traffic routes, soft buzz from outside was considerably reduced in volume compared to rest of campus spaces. Only an occasional page turn or whispered consultation could be heard breaking through this tranquil bubble encapsulated within towering walls, full of knowledge and wisdom accumulated over decades, if not centuries. Aelith leaned against one corner carrel's wall with a deep breath, eyes closing momentarily, as she savored the rare peace like someone starved suddenly given enough water to quench thirst completely. Daniel watched her quietly before pulling out his own laptop from its protective case beside books he had brought along just in case today needed more extended research sessions. than usual. "Want me to keep you company?" Daniel offered gently, voice soft but clear, as if understanding it was better not to overwhelm the moment with too much noise or chatter right away. "Or do you need time alone?" Aelith opened her eyes slowly once more and turned towards him again, this time offering a genuine smile tinged softly by relief mixed in somewhere underneath layers of exhaustion she had been carrying around since arrival on Earth weeks back now. "Company would be nice," Aelith said after considering the question briefly. She stepped closer into one side of Carol's alcove, taking her own seat, as Daniel did similarly, opposite from her, within that same tiny haven carved out here among towering bookcases holding worlds worth knowledge and stories waiting to be explored further by curious minds like theirs. As they both settled down together once more, amidst this new quiet sanctuary found amongst books and silence, rather than bustling cafeteria, a noise where first encounter took place, conversation flowed easier now compared even just moments ago. Daniel started off, introducing himself properly, without expecting anything in return, beyond maybe having another friendly face among all these humans she encountered daily while completing her diplomatic mission. "Daniel Park," he began simply enough, as if stating facts nobody needed clarification on. "A graduate student studying theoretical physics here at the university." Aelith nodded thoughtfully, absorbing his introduction, before sharing similarly, though with added context about herself which Daniel did not yet know until now, despite days already knowing each other in ways neither expected. "I am Princess Aelith val'Doreen," she explained calmly. "I was sent to Earth by my people as part of diplomatic relations." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, taken aback, but quickly recovering with a gentle smile back towards her, acknowledging this truth without flinching away due to sudden revelation. He had already seen something special about Aelith from very start, and knowing official status did not change his opinion or treatment, despite now having that information finally out in open. "Princess," Daniel repeated gently, more curious than anything else given unexpected yet welcomed openness between them today compared usual interactions so far thus far. "I just figured you were another student here too." Aelith chuckled softly at this remark, though it lacked real humor or mockery behind tone, instead reflecting genuine appreciation, shared sentiment of mutual misunderstanding leading towards connection rather than barriers dividing people. "Yes, I suppose that would be easier for most humans to accept," Aelith admitted candidly, but being introduced as such, she trailed off, letting him understand meaning conveyed more through silence itself, rather needing extra words spell out truth she preferred, kept from overwhelming crowds, endless thoughts buzzing inside head constantly, everywhere except this library nook. Daniel nodded slowly in comprehension, finding comfort in her preference to keep it simple amongst peers, even if knowing official status might change dynamics, otherwise unknown factors affecting daily interactions back home, now transplanted here on Earth temporarily. He understood that feeling well enough through experiences, navigating own cultures, expectations, and pressures alongside personal dreams, chasing academic aspirations beyond those limits too often imposed upon one. "What about your thesis?" Aelith asked curiously, shifting gears smoothly, as they both seemed to be falling naturally into rhythm of normal conversation rather than awkward dance around truths kept hidden or revealed prematurely between acquaintances meeting under unusual circumstances like theirs. "Can you tell me more?" Daniel leaned back slightly against Carol's cushioned seating, while opening laptop screen fully showing array of research documents, notes, and diagrams related directly to ongoing work towards completing academic requirements, leading next stage postgraduate life ahead. He pointed at certain sections, with explanation, detailed enough for outsider, yet still intriguing glimpse insight into field rarely discussed outside scientific community. Anyway, currently working on quantum entanglement theories, Daniel explained briefly, while gesturing through various aspects covered comprehensively in course of study pursued thus far, trying to prove how particles connected over vast distances behave contrary expectations when measured simultaneously. Aelith listened intently, face lighting up with genuine interest despite initially daunting subject matter unfamiliar, but fascinating nonetheless given connection linking two different worlds, seemingly apart yet sharing common threads, running through fabric reality, underlying observable phenomena governing existence regardless species or cultural background. That sounds incredibly complex, Aelith remarked admiringly, yet also beautiful in way it ties everything together cross distances. Daniel nodded slowly, agreeing with sentiment expressed by visitor from distant planet despite initially thinking conversation might prove one-sided given vast gap understanding between disciplines studied here versus back home on Doreen. It is both daunting and rewarding challenge, Daniel said honestly, to find patterns where others see chaos, or nothing at all really beyond simple observations. Aelith smiled gently, her eyes reflecting deep wells of shared experience despite surface differences between them physically or culturally speaking fundamentally, underlying universal truths, seeking explanation through scientific methods pursued zealously, in quest knowledge transcending boundaries imposed by mere existence, within single frame reference restricting broader scope, understanding otherwise impossible to grasp fully without stepping outside comfort zones established early on developmentally. Over time, as discussions continued flowing easily back and forth, Daniel noticed subtle changes taking place inside Aelith's demeanor, relaxation settling deeper into posture held previously rigid from constant strain endured, just surviving overwhelming sensory onslaught, assaulting mental defenses, constantly bombarded by countless minds speaking thoughts aloud, without filter or restraint anywhere, beyond few sanctuaries found among books like this one today. He asked questions about her planet, genuinely curious despite initial shock at discovering royal status, which did not seem to alter personality. Warmly welcoming friendliness displayed towards him for a moment, meeting first amidst crowded cafeteria. The tables, filled with noise-canceling serenity, offered solitude shared quietly. Instead, Aelith spoke openly and freely about Doreen's culture, describing vast open skies above their crystalline cities and lush green forests, thriving alongside majestic rivers flowing through heartland of civilization built upon foundations respect for nature and technological advancement coexisting peacefully side by side, rather than conflicting interests, driving human society often towards extremes, unbalanced scales, favoring one over other too frequently. Daniel listened with rapt attention, finding himself captivated not just by descriptions, but also the underlying philosophy guiding development path taken differently compared Earth's trajectory despite similarities running deep underneath surface differences visible from casual observation alone. I've never really had conversations like this, Aelith admitted softly as light began fading outside windows, surrounding their quiet sanctuary within towering bookcases, holding worlds worth knowledge ready to be explored further by curious minds. Normal ones, I mean. Daniel turned slightly towards her curiously, noticing hint of melancholy. Underlying admission voiced clearly now, without hesitation or worry, about repercussions stemming from sharing too much personal information prematurely here among strangers rather than familiar faces back home on Doreen. Why not? Daniel asked gently, truly curious given rare glimpse insight into experiences vastly different yet oddly familiar despite surface disparities obvious between their worlds separated by stars and light years apart. Aelith sighed softly before responding with sincerity, pouring through every word chosen carefully, but freely shared without reservation. Now that trust established through unexpected bond formed here amidst books, rather than back home, where isolation enforced due royal status imposed limitations, rather freedom sought here among diverse population. Earth's university, offering glimpse, alternative existence, beyond familiar confines previously restricting personal growth and understanding. On Doreen, everyone knows who you are, Aelith explained softly. Your position, it dictates how others treat you. She paused thoughtfully before continuing, with a small smile playing at corners of lips, showing unexpected glimmer hope finding respite from constant pressure facing every day, despite initial struggles adapting foreign environment. But here, she asked rhetorically, turning back towards Daniel, who had been quietly listening to her story unfold piece by piece. Here I can just be, Aelith. Her eyes were warm as they met his gaze, directly now for the first time without layers of social expectations clouding mutual understanding formed through simple shared interactions, rather than forced proximity, imposed due diplomatic obligations, dictating otherwise. Daniel's heart warmed at seeing genuine joy reflected in her silver eyes, a rare and precious sight that made him feel proud to have helped create, even if only indirectly through providing quiet sanctuary among books where peace could be found amidst chaos. He reached out hesitantly, but confidently, then placed his hand over hers, resting lightly on table between them, symbolizing bond formed despite initial barriers separating two individuals from vastly different backgrounds and circumstances, yet finding common ground in shared humanity despite differences. Thank you, Aelith whispered again, this time with genuine emotion shining brightly through her words. For everything. Daniel smiled gently back at her, without needing to verbalize reply, beyond silent acknowledgement conveyed through physical touch connecting them more deeply than any conversation ever could, bonding two souls across vast chasm separating worlds, united in quest knowledge and understanding, transcending barriers imposed by mere existence within single frame reference, restricting broader scope comprehension otherwise impossible to grasp fully unless stepping outside comfort zones established early on developmental journey. And as light faded further outside windowed alcove encapsulating sanctuary shared among books, Daniel realized something important himself, first time since Aelith's arrival, that he felt genuinely happy too, not just pleased or content with circumstances surrounding him, but truly joyful in way only comes from forming meaningful connection transcending superficial encounters between strangers thrown together by chance or circumstance, rather than destiny guiding paths towards meeting point where worlds collide yet merge seamlessly into something greater beyond individual components making up whole. She was right. Thigh's conversation felt normal. For the first time since coming to Earth, Aelith's face lit up with genuine happiness, mirroring Daniel's own as they continued their quiet connection amidst books and silence, shared amongst countless others, finding solace in knowledge gathered over centuries rather than fleeting moments passing by like wind through trees outside. And with that thought, Daniel knew he had made a friend, a true one who saw beyond titles and positions to the person inside. It was enough for them both right now to be just Aelith and Daniel in this corner of the library where peace reigned supreme over all else. Daniel and Aelith sat in a quiet corner of the our city garden as evening approached. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lush greenery and illuminating everything around them with a warm golden light. Birds chirped softly overhead while a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers. "Here," Aelith said quietly, gazing out over the garden. "It's so peaceful compared to everywhere else on campus." She turned back towards Daniel, who was reading under his usual spot in this secluded part of the grounds, lost in thought yet always aware of her presence. Daniel set down his book and looked up at Aelith with a soft smile. "Yeah," he agreed. "This is one of my favorite spots on campus." She sighed deeply, clearly trying to gather her thoughts before speaking again. There was something different about the way she held herself tonight, tighter, more guarded than usual. Daniel could tell that whatever she wanted to say next wasn't easy for her. "Daniel," Aelith began carefully, after a moment of hesitation, "there's something I need to explain." She took another deep breath and turned fully towards him now, meeting his gaze squarely in the fading light. "I know we've only just started talking more seriously, but please hear me out." Her voice was low and serious. Daniel nodded encouragingly without interrupting her train of thought. "Of course," he replied softly. Aelith took another long breath before continuing. She reached into a pocket inside the voluminous dress-like garment she wore daily as part of diplomatic attire for Earth appearances, pulling out an intricate silver pendant that hung around her neck on a delicate chain. It looked like something from another world entirely, a small, glowing gem encased in ornate metalwork. "This," Aelith said, holding it up to the fading light so Daniel could see better, "is one of the most important things I possess." She touched its smooth surface gently with her fingertips before tucking it back beneath her clothing again. "This pendant amplifies my natural telepathic abilities." Daniel's eyes widened slightly in surprise at this revelation, but he didn't interrupt. "On Doreen," she continued slowly, "our species is naturally empatheticable to hear and feel the emotions of those around us constantly." Her voice was strained, as if reliving difficult memories. "It's overwhelming here on Earth where everyone has such loud thoughts all the time." Daniel nodded understandingly but didn't speak further. "I come from a world where we have learned to regulate our abilities," she explained quietly, almost ashamedly. "We can block others out when necessary to preserve sanity in crowds and public settings." She paused again before continuing with visible effort. "But here, I am constantly bombarded by everyone's thoughts." Daniel watched her carefully, his expression a mix of concern and empathy. "I try to control it," she confessed softly, almost to herself rather than him specifically. "I use the pendant to filter out as much noise as possible." Her hand went back up unconsciously to touch where the pendant lay under her clothes again. "But," Aelith admitted finally, after another long pause, meeting Daniel's eyes directly now with a raw honesty that seemed to strip away all pretenses between them, "it isn't enough most days." Daniel listened intently as she spoke, but didn't say anything until she had finished explaining herself entirely. "What about you?" she asked tentatively then, her voice dropping even lower. "Why are your thoughts so quiet?" Daniel blinked in surprise, at this unexpected question before replying slowly and honestly. "I don't know," he admitted with a shrug. "Maybe I'm just not interesting." Aelith's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't laugh. Instead, her expression softened almost painfully, as if his words had struck some deep chord within her. "You're the most peaceful person I've ever met." She reached forward hesitantly and gently touched Daniel's face with one hand, a small gesture that would mean nothing on earth among humans, yet here was shockingly intimate between them. "That's very interesting to me." Daniel felt a warmth spread through him at this unexpected compliment, his heart skipping a beat in response. "Thank you," he whispered back softly but earnestly. Aelith nodded appreciatively before drawing her hand away again and folding it over her chest nervously instead. She was clearly still uneasy about the conversation, even as she'd been brave enough to initiate such an honest exchange tonight. Daniel's eyes traveled down from Aelith's face to look around their little corner of the garden more closely for the first time in what felt like ages, really taking it all in now that there wasn't a book or other distraction occupying his attention. The setting sun illuminated everything with a warm golden glow, while birds fluttered softly overhead, adding small notes of melody here and there amidst general tranquility. "Do you really think I'm not interesting?" Aelith asked suddenly, her gaze meeting Daniel's once more directly, but now with an undercurrent of uncertainty swirling in those deep silver eyes. Daniel couldn't help smiling at Thatch, had a way of making him feel like anything was possible if only they talked about it openly together. "Not everyone sees things the same," he replied gently, his tone soft and reassuring. "And you've seen me for who I am." He paused to let that sink in before continuing with genuine sincerity, reflecting deeply on their developing relationship since she'd come into his life so unexpectedly yet irrevocably, altering it forevermore. Daniel reached out one hand, hesitantly but confidently, placing it over Aelith's, resting lightly on the table between them, a silent promise of connection beyond words that seemed to speak volumes about both who they were and what mattered most moving forward in these early days together, as unlikely friends bound by mutual need, yet strength finding its way amidst chaos surrounding everywhere else. She looked down at their hands, touching briefly before her eyes darted back up again to meet his gaze directly once more. There was something different there, a deeper understanding forming between them through shared vulnerability and honesty, unclouded by social niceties or superficial pleasantries, but instead built upon real foundations of mutual respect and acceptance. "I've never met anyone quite like you," Aelith confessed softly, her voice tinged with wonder even as she admitted to this. "And that scares me." Daniel's eyes softened at hearing those words spoken so honestly from someone had grown close enough to over these short weeks since their first meeting under unusual circumstances. "What do I need to know about you?" Daniel asked, instead of pressing further into the fear she felt. "If it helps us be friends, tell me what matters." Aelith's eyes searched his face for a long moment before her lips curved slightly upward in recognition and gratitude at this offer he made without hesitation or expectation. "Your royalty," Aelith blurted out suddenly, a truth that had been building inside her to admit, but was now overwhelming enough she couldn't hold back the revelation any longer. "My family is one of the oldest on Doreen, me father's lineage dating back millennia." Daniel felt his heart skip a beat at this unexpected admission, yet he didn't let it show in his expression, only nodding slowly with respect and understanding instead, as if such information wasn't shocking, but rather expected given everything she had already revealed about her true nature over recent weeks. "I know," Daniel said quietly, after another long moment of silence stretching between them now. "You're a princess." Aelith's eyes widened in surprise at his matter-of-fact acceptance of this revelation, without any flustered reaction or attempts to distance himself from the sudden truth laid bare before him. She felt as though her breath had been stolen away entirely by the weight of this moment. "How?" she asked tentatively, after a long pause, not sure if he meant it as insult or simple fact stated plainly and honestly between them. "Your aura," Daniel answered simply with another quiet note. Something about the way she carried herself despite all struggles made her regal status clear to someone who had always paid close attention to details others often missed. "You don't have to hide who you are from me." Aelith's eyes softened and filled with a mix of emotion as she heard these words, feeling both relief at being understood without needing to explain further, yet also some sadness that her true self couldn't be accepted so easily by everyone back home on Doreen. "I'm afraid," Aelith admitted after another long breath drawn in deeply, "that if you knew the real me, I represent, you'd change." Daniel's gaze met hers firmly then, his expression a blend of gentle strength and unwavering honesty as he answered with sincere conviction, one validating truth. She looked away briefly before meeting his eyes once more resolutely this time. "You're right," Aelith finally agreed quietly, after another long moment. "This feels normal." Her lips curved in a small, genuine smile, no rare thing for her to show on earth, amidst constant pressure facing every day despite initial struggles adapting foreign environment. "And I like that about you too," Daniel added softly yet meaningfully. "You make me feel comfortable being myself." Aelith's eyes softened even further at these words before she turned back towards him fully now, pressing her hand against his shoulder gently. Another intimate gesture in Doreen culture meant to show deep appreciation and respect shared between individuals, forming bond transcending simple friendship. "Thank you," Aelith whispered again with genuine emotion shining brightly through her voice. "For everything." Daniel smiled gently back at her, without needing further explanation beyond silent acknowledgement conveyed physically as well verbally, connecting them more deeply than any conversation ever could, bonding two souls across vast chasm, separating worlds united in quest knowledge and understanding, transcending barriers imposed by mere existence within single frame reference, restricting broader scope comprehension otherwise impossible to grasp fully unless stepping outside comfort zones established early on developmental journey. And with that thought, Daniel knew he had made a friend, a true one who saw beyond titles and positions to the person inside. It was enough for them both right now to be just Aelith and Daniel in this corner of the garden where peace reigned supreme over all else. Daniel sat alone at his usual spot in a corner of the university cafe, scrolling through his tablet while sipping lukewarm coffee. The background buzz of chatter and clinking cups faded into white noise around him as he focused on deciphering complex equations for his thesis project. Just then, Aelith entered, her lavender skin standing out starkly against the muted tones of the room. Her silver eyes darted nervously from person to person, catching every stray thought in a whirlwind that made her visibly tense up. She hurried over to an empty corner and sat down with a sigh of relief. "Hi," Daniel said softly, as she approached his table after a brief pause at hers earlier in the week when he had first noticed her presence in the cafe without any interaction yet between them. Aelith nodded back, her lips forming a small smile but not meeting her eyes. "Hello." She opened her laptop and placed it on the table, avoiding eye contact with anyone around her as she started typing quickly into its sleek interface. Daniel observed quietly for several moments before speaking again. "You look like you're having a hard time," he noted sympathetically, without any hint of pity or intrusion upon someone's personal space or thoughts, simply acknowledging what was plainly visible to him from the subtle changes in body language and facial expressions she displayed throughout the day thus far. Aelith looked up abruptly at his words, but didn't say anything right away. Instead, her gaze darted around nervously again before returning hesitantly back towards Daniel. It's just crowded," she admitted with a sigh after another long moment of silence, filled only by their shared breathing and the faint hum of background noise. Understanding dawned on him immediately as he recalled how earlier that week she had seemed visibly distressed in any environment where multiple minds were present simultaneously, overwhelming her sensitive telepathic abilities unique to Doreen physiology. "Is there somewhere quieter you could go?" Aelith's shoulders relaxed slightly at his suggestion, but then fell back down with a defeated shrug. "My apartment," was all she said before quickly burying herself in work once more. Later that evening, Daniel found himself wandering through the bustling streets of downtown as he made his way home from campus. The city lights sparkled like stars against the backdrop of darkened skyscrapers, while cars honked impatiently and pedestrians jostled one another on crowded sidewalks, filled with vibrant chatter carried by passing winds. After walking past several blocks, Daniel spotted a familiar figure huddled beneath an awning near a small cafe where they had once met for coffee. He approached cautiously to see Aelith sitting there alone, staring into space as if lost in thought or rather caught up in the cacophony of minds around her that she could hear so clearly. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked gently when he got closer, noticing how tightly balled her fists were and how strained each breath seemed for her to take despite sitting still without moving much at all physically, but mentally battling invisible forces no one else could perceive or comprehend fully except through indirect observations during their brief interactions thus far. Aelith turned towards him with wide eyes filled suddenly with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name yet, only understand in fragments as pieces of thoughts and memories collided chaotically inside her mind, making it hard to focus on anything concrete for longer than fleeting seconds at most. "Roman 2 can't handle this," she admitted finally, after several agonizing minutes passing by without words spoken aloud, but plenty exchanged telepathically between them, now forming a unique bond based solely upon empathy shared across species boundaries and cultural divides. Daniel's heart clenched with sympathy as he took in the raw pain-etching lines of anguish into her delicate features. Without hesitation, he sat down beside her on one knee so that their bodies were touching slightly, a rare act of physical comfort given how rarely such closeness occurred between beings from two different worlds accustomed to maintaining personal space boundaries firmly established through cultural norms and social etiquette. Aelith tensed initially at his sudden proximity, but then slowly relaxed as she felt an unusual absence of overwhelming sensory input around Daniel. His presence alone seemed capable of drowning out much of the chaotic mental din that usually bombarded her relentlessly wherever crowds gathered or conversations flowed freely among groups of people sharing common interests and backgrounds, regardless whether they spoke languages familiar to Aelith. "You can come over," he offered quietly, his voice steady despite a hint of worry lacing through its timbre. "Your place is quiet." Aelith's gaze met his briefly before looking away again, almost immediately, as if ashamed or embarrassed by her vulnerability now laid bare in front of someone who clearly saw beyond surface appearances and into deeper emotional layers rarely exposed even among family members back home on Doreen. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she confessed honestly, pressing the heels of her hands firmly against closed eyelids, as if willing herself to escape from reality for just a moment longer until forced awake by harsh realities demanding immediate attention once more soon enough. "They are calling me back." Daniel's hand found hers gently, squeezing lightly yet reassuringly between fingers that trembled ever so slightly under his palm. "What do they want?" "They sent someone," Aelith explained haltingly through clenched teeth, as if holding back tears threatening to spill over despite best efforts at maintaining composure and self-control in public spaces where social expectations dictated otherwise more often than not given the rigid structures governing daily life on both worlds involved here. "To bring me home," and Daniel urged softly, urging her forward without pressing too hard, knowing full well that she would reveal what needed to be shared eventually once ready, emotionally enough to face such challenges head-on rather than shying away from them out of fear or uncertainty. Aelith took a deep breath before letting it out slowly through pursed lips. "The diplomatic mission is over," she declared finally, her voice devoid of emotion, but tinged with resignation nonetheless, as if accepting fate's cruel hand dealt without warning nor consideration for personal preferences regarding ideal timelines established earlier according to plans made weeks ago back when circumstances seemed vastly different compared against present-day reality now unfolding before them both unexpectedly yet inevitably. Daniel nodded slowly in understanding. "Okay," he said simply, his grip on her hand tightening slightly as if offering solidarity and support despite not knowing exactly how much help could truly be provided given the complexity of interstellar politics beyond comprehension for ordinary citizens caught up within grander schemes controlled by powerful entities wielding immense influence across countless worlds linked together through intricate webs woven from threads of communication, commerce, culture, conflict, collaboration, everything that defined modern galactic civilization as it stood poised delicately balanced, precariously upon knife-edge brink between peace and chaos depending on actions taken or avoided altogether at critical junctures. Aelith's gaze returned to his once more filled now not just with distress, but also gratitude shining brightly through eyes reflecting inner turmoil being slowly eased away by simple act of physical touch establishing unspoken bonds stronger than any words ever spoken aloud could convey under normal circumstances, yet precisely what Daniel offered wholeheartedly, without hesitation whatsoever, based purely upon innate sense compassion guiding every decision made in moments fraught danger requiring quick thinking tempered wisdom gained throughout lifetime spent navigating complex human society built around fragile constructs easily shattered by outside forces beyond control of individuals caught up amidst currents sweeping through entire worlds, altering landscapes overnight when least expected. "I don't think I can go back," she whispered softly, her voice breaking slightly at edges where sorrow threatened to overwhelm resolve already tested severely over past few days leading up this pivotal moment now confronting them both without warning nor preparation, leaving little room for maneuvering around unyielding truths staring starkly in faces, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter, awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. Daniel's gaze met hers firmly then, his expression a blend of gentle strength and unwavering honesty. "Then stay," he said simply yet meaningfully, conveying everything needed through few words spoken aloud, coupled together with unspoken promises held closely within hearts beating in sync, now forming deeper connection than either had experienced before, amidst vast cosmos stretching endlessly outward towards infinity beyond imagination. Aelith looked away briefly, but then met his eyes once more resolutely this time. "It's not that simple," she admitted awfully, her voice filled with frustration and resignation alike, as if realizing full scope implications involved here, extending far beyond personal preferences regarding individual desires versus societal expectations imposed by roles assigned within complex hierarchies governing both worlds, intertwined deeply through diplomatic agreements established decades ago, now facing unprecedented challenges, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations already weakened significantly over recent months. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened slightly, conveying strength and support without words needed, as usual when communicating with someone intimately connected despite differences separating them physically and culturally. "Make it simple," he urged quietly yet firmly, his voice filled with conviction born from deep sense rightness guiding every decision made thus far leading up this pivotal moment, now confronting them both squarely head on, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter, awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. Aelith's eyes softened and filled with a mix of emotion as she looked back towards Daniel now, the weight of her thoughts finally beginning to lift ever so slightly under his steadfast gaze. "I want you," she admitted quietly, after another long moment passing by without words spoken aloud, yet conveying everything needed through unspoken promises held closely within hearts beating in sync, now forming deeper connection than either had experienced before, amidst vast cosmos stretching endlessly outward towards infinity beyond imagination. "And," Daniel prompted gently, encouraging her to say more even though he already understood fully what she meant beneath surface layer of words chosen carefully, due caution regarding implications involved here extending far beyond personal preferences regarding individual desires versus societal expectations imposed by roles assigned within complex hierarchies governing both worlds, intertwined deeply through diplomatic agreements established decades ago, now facing unprecedented challenges, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations already weakened significantly over recent months. Aelith's gaze met his once more firmly this time, her eyes filled with resolve born from deep sense rightness guiding every decision made thus far leading up this pivotal moment, now confronting them both squarely head on, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter, awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. "This," she added quietly yet firmly, conveying everything needed through few words chosen carefully, under circumstances requiring utmost clarity and precision regarding intentions conveyed without ambiguity nor misunderstanding, leaving little room for misinterpretation based purely upon innate sense compassion guiding every decision made thus far leading up this pivotal moment now confronting them both squarely head on, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter, awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. And quiet, Daniel finished softly yet meaningfully, conveying everything needed through few words chosen carefully, under circumstances requiring utmost clarity and precision regarding intentions conveyed without ambiguity nor misunderstanding, leaving little room for misinterpretation, based purely upon innate sense compassion guiding every decision made thus far leading up this pivotal moment now confronting them both squarely head on, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter, awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. Aelith nodded slowly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, reflecting inner turmoil being slowly eased away by simple act of physical touch, establishing unspoken bond stronger than any words ever spoken aloud could convey under normal circumstances, yet precisely what Daniel offered wholeheartedly, without hesitation whatsoever, based purely upon innate sense compassion guiding every decision made in moments fraught danger, requiring quick thinking, tempered wisdom gained throughout lifetime spent navigating complex human society built around fragile constructs easily shattered by outside forces beyond control of individuals, caught up amidst currents sweeping through entire worlds, altering landscapes overnight when least expected. "But I'm a princess," she whispered softly, her voice breaking slightly, as if realizing full scope implications involved here, extending far beyond personal preferences regarding individual desires versus societal expectations imposed by roles assigned within complex hierarchies governing both worlds, intertwined deeply through diplomatic agreements established decades ago, now facing unprecedented challenges, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations already weakened significantly over recent months. Daniel's gaze met hers firmly then, his expression a blend of gentle strength and unwavering honesty. "Then stay," he repeated simply yet meaningfully, conveying everything needed through few words spoken aloud, coupled together with unspoken promises held closely within hearts beating in sync, now forming deeper connection than either had experienced before amidst vast cosmos stretching endlessly outward towards infinity beyond imagination. Aelith looked away briefly, but then met his eyes once more resolutely this time. "I can't," she admitted quietly yet firmly, her voice filled with resignation, as if realizing full scope implications involved here, extending far beyond personal preferences regarding individual desires versus societal expectations imposed by roles assigned within complex hierarchies governing both worlds, intertwined deeply through diplomatic agreements established decades ago, now facing unprecedented challenges, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations already weakened significantly over recent months. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened slightly, conveying strength and support without words needed, as usual when communicating with someone intimately connected despite differences separating them physically and culturally. "Make it simple," he urged quietly yet firmly, his voice filled with conviction born from deep sense rightness guiding every decision made thus far leading up this pivotal moment now confronting them both squarely head on, demanding immediate attention before moving on to next chapter awaiting arrival, uncertain whether it would bring respite or new challenges, just as severe, if not worse, depending on decisions made at critical junctures still to come. Aelith's eyes softened and filled with a mix of emotion as she looked back towards Daniel now, the weight of her thoughts finally beginning to lift ever so slightly under his steadfast gaze. "I want you," she admitted quietly, after another long moment passing by without words spoken aloud yet conveying everything needed through unspoken promises held closely within hearts beating in sync, now forming deeper connection than either had experienced before amidst vast cosmos stretching endlessly outward towards infinity beyond imagination. "Then stay," Daniel said simply, his voice steady and reassuring. "You don't have to be a princess here." Aelith's eyes shimmered with tears as she nodded slowly, the weight of her decision becoming clear in the quiet between them. "And I want this quiet." Her words were barely audible, but carried so much more than their volume suggested. The raw vulnerability and strength interwoven in those few syllables made Daniel's heart ache for her thighs, alien princess caught between duty and desire, torn by responsibilities she never asked to shoulder, and a peace that felt like an impossible luxury. "But," Aelith added softly, "I am still your friend." She pressed his hand gently before getting up from the bench where they had been sitting together under cover of darkness, the city lights reflecting off her pale lavender skin as if highlighting every contour with soft luminescence unique to Doreen physiology. Daniel watched her go, a sense of both hope and dread settling over him like an invisible shroud woven through threads of anticipation and uncertainty regarding what lay ahead for them both in days still to come, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. And with that thought, Daniel knew he had made a friend, a true one who saw beyond titles and positions to the person inside. It was enough for them both right now to be just Aelith and Daniel in this corner of the garden where peace reigned supreme over all else despite challenges yet to come, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. "But she's a princess. She has duties." And Daniel sat alone on a wooden bench under the sprawling branches of an old oak tree at the edge of the university campus garden, his book open but unread as he watched the shuttle terminal far across the lawn. The air was cool and crisp that evening, carrying hints of autumn's approach with its faint scent of earth and fallen leaves. The sky above began to darken gradually, a transition from soft twilight hues into deepening blue and purple tones heralding nightfall. Street lamps flickered to life around him, their warm glow casting long shadows over the grassy expanse where students often lounged or walked briskly between classes. The distant sound of traffic mingled with occasional laughter echoing from nearby buildings as people prepared for evening activities. The shuttle terminal came into view. No, it was a small structure made mostly out of glass and metal, sleek and modern in its design to blend seamlessly into the urban landscape despite standing apart slightly from it all. Aelith would be there shortly, she had informed him earlier today about her departure. Daniel felt his heart tighten with both sadness and resolve as he thought of saying goodbye. A slight breeze ruffled through the leaves above, rustling softly against each other like whispers of secrets shared between old friends meeting for a clandestine conversation beneath moonlit skies. The sound was calming amidst the otherwise quiet setting. Birds, settling into their nighttime routine, could be heard chirping melodiously from various corners around Daniel's secluded spot in this peaceful haven far away from bustling city life and its accompanying noise. Daniel, a soft, familiar voice interrupted his thoughts, drawing him back to reality and turning towards the source of sound, just then appearing nearby. Princess Aelith stood there looking exhausted, yet strangely serene amidst chaos she carried within her mind, constantly bombarding with endless stream of other people's emotions, overwhelming every moment spent outside solitude. Princess Daniel greeted quietly but warmly upon seeing her, getting up to meet her halfway across the grassy patch dividing them from one another. She gave him a faint smile in return, though it didn't quite reach those silver eyes shimmering with fatigue and sorrow. "We should go now," Aelith said softly after taking deep breaths, trying desperately to clear out thoughts crowding within mind, overwhelming every waking moment spent surrounded by humanity's constant noise. "They will be waiting for me." Nodding silently in understanding, Daniel walked beside her towards the shuttle terminal, feeling oddly small yet also incredibly significant under gaze of Aelith's silver eyes piercing deeply into soul-searching answers to questions never asked aloud, but always lingering quietly beneath surface. As they approached, lights from within building illuminated path ahead, casting long shadows stretching out behind them, as if warning about journey still lay ahead, full of uncertainties and unknowns. Students passing by glanced their way briefly before moving on, oblivious or indifferent towards unusual sight of human male walking alongside visibly regal alien princess dressed inconspicuously yet somehow exuding aura, unmistakably royal despite attempts made at blending in. "Are you nervous?" Daniel asked softly once they were close enough to hear each other over ambient noise coming from terminals interior, where several people awaited Princess Aelith's arrival, anxiously looking forward towards diplomatic mission soon embarking on behalf of their planet. Aelith looked down, her lavender skin seeming paler than usual under the glow emitted by Shuttle Bay. "Yes," she admitted quietly, after a moment, voice tinged with sorrow and reluctance. "It hurts there being near so many people." Daniel squeezed her hand gently in silent support as they continued walking towards building's entrance, where a queue of officials stood ready to guide them inside for final preparations before takeoff. The shuttle bay itself was brightly lit, but sterile, feeling devoid warmth human touch could bring amidst cold metallic surfaces reflecting lights off smooth finishes. Rows upon rows lined up, with seats facing central aisle leading straight back into heart-shadowy interior, or hidden beyond doors, waiting patiently to open their welcoming embrace soon enough once everyone inside made final arrangements necessary for journey. Aelith's eyes darted nervously around room, scanning faces of every person present, recognizing none, but still feeling suffocated under weight invisible scrutiny. Each pair seemed trained in directing towards her, as if expecting something miraculous would happen simply because she was there among them. Royalty come to visit humble earthlings, carrying hopes and dreams for brighter future. "Do you have everything?" Daniel asked, his voice steady yet concerned. "I wish I could do more." She turned back toward him then, those silver eyes reflecting depths of gratitude unseen by others surrounding but felt deeply within heart. Strings tugged gently with every word spoken truthfully, even if only few seconds ago they barely knew each other's names properly. "You are doing enough," Aelith said softly, after another moment passed between them. "Your peace, it helps me." Her hand remained clasped tightly around his own, fingers intertwining almost subconsciously as she leaned slightly into body warmth offered so freely and generously, even when distance seemed inevitable, looming large ahead, uncharted territory filled with uncertainty. Just then, the voice-over PA system announced departure imminent, causing everyone present within room to start gathering final belongings or taking last-minute measures necessary before boarding commenced officially. Officials moved swiftly, guiding way through crowd towards designated gate, where Princess Aelith waited patiently for entrance into shuttle's safety, awaiting beyond threshold, yet looming ever so close enough now. Daniel could see pain etched deeply onto features as Aelith walked forward toward waiting door, every step seeming to weigh heavily against invisible forces, pulling her back from decision already made but still struggling bitterly within, heart torn between duty and desire. The noise around them increased exponentially, the chatter of people blending into an overwhelming cacophony that seemed intent on drowning out everything else. She stopped just before reaching doors, turning one last time towards him, as if searching for strength she didn't know how to find elsewhere amongst those surrounding her, now preparing final preparations hurriedly behind scenes far away from public eye. "This is goodbye then?" "Not necessarily," Daniel replied, after another moment of hesitation, weighing carefully words chosen, knowing full well what stakes lay ahead, uncertain whether paths would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions, splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. "I meant, as your friend." Aelith's voice was barely a whisper, but filled with raw honesty and vulnerability. "You will still visit?" "Of course," he assured her, wanting to make sure she understood that despite physical distance between them, friendship remained unbreakable thread binding hearts together through vast expanse of space-time continuum, connecting two souls found amidst chaos, overwhelming all else, yet somehow finding peace within silent corners where few dared venture. She nodded slowly, as if finally coming to terms with decision made. Difficult journey ahead, fraught with challenges already dauntingly apparent despite best efforts hiding behind veil indifference often adopted by those unfamiliar outsiders unable to comprehend complexities underlying interactions between beings vastly different worlds apart, but sharing common humanity beneath surface layers distinctions. With that, Aelith turned away once more and walked toward the doors leading into Heart's shadowy interior, where peace awaited beyond threshold, though looming ever so close enough now. Daniel watched her go silently, his eyes following until she disappeared behind sliding glass panels, sealing off room from outside world, momentarily separating them, despite physical distance remaining mere few steps between benches under tree far away garden corner, offering solace amidst chaos overwhelming all else. But before doors could fully close, cutting view completely out of sight one last time, Aelith stopped suddenly, halting journey forward, as if reconsidering decision already made, but still struggling bitterly within, heart torn apart between responsibilities duty demanded and desires yearned for so deeply yet seemingly impossible achieve under circumstances present now. He saw her hesitate, watched those silver eyes shimmer with unshed tears reflecting inner turmoil, raging war inside mind, unable cope with overwhelming sensations bombarding every waking moment spent surrounded by humanity's constant noise. And then she turned back toward him, finally breaking silence, filling air between them once more after a brief interlude, during which neither spoke aloud, yet conveyed everything needed through looks exchanged silently. Across distance, separating hearts now connected despite physical boundaries imposed upon journey ahead, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions, splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. "I can't," Aelith whispered, her voice trembling slightly, but filled with resolve, newfound clarity gained through moments spent together far away from rest world outside garden corner, where peace reigned supreme, offering sanctuary amongst chaos overwhelming all else, yet somehow finding solace within silent corners where few dared venture. She took another step back towards Daniel now, leaving behind threshold that awaited welcoming embrace beyond closed doors, momentarily separating them despite physical distance, remaining mere few steps between benches under tree faraway campus grounds. Daniel watched her approach silently, still holding out hope newfound friend would find way stay amongst those caring deeply for well-being amidst overwhelming responsibilities. Duty demanded pushing ever forward, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. When she reached him, they stood together in quiet understanding shared without need of words spoken aloud, yet conveyed everything needed through looks exchanged silently across distance, separating hearts now connected despite physical boundaries imposed upon journey ahead, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions, splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. But he said nothing more, simply watched as Aelith made her choice to be just another person rather than the princess she was. The silence between them spoke volumes. It told of trust and friendship formed under unlikely circumstances amidst vast expanse, connecting two souls found amidst chaos overwhelming all else, yet somehow finding peace within silent corners where few dared venture. And with that thought, Daniel knew he had made a friend, a true one who saw beyond titles and positions to the person inside. It was enough for them both right now to be just Aelith and Daniel in this corner of the garden where peace reigned supreme over all else despite challenges yet to come, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions, splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely by recent events, threatening stability built upon fragile foundations weakened significantly over recent months. But she's a princess. She has duties. Aelith sat alone at a small table near the back corner of the university cafe, her slender fingers tapping lightly against the cool metal surface of her tablet screen as she typed out a message to her family. The room was bustling around her. Students murmured quietly in groups, sipping on hot drinks and exchanging notes for upcoming exams, but Aelith was shielded from their thoughts by the corner's secluded nature. "Princess?" Daniel asked gently, slipping into the booth across from her with his usual quiet grace. Aelith looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting a mix of determination and fatigue. "In proposing new terms," she said firmly. Daniel nodded understandingly, but didn't say anything more. He knew how hard this must be for Aelith, balancing the weight of duty against the reality that Earth had become home to her in ways she never imagined possible. The cafe was dimly lit with warm yellow lights, flickering softly from hanging fixtures, overhead steaming cups, and soft murmurs filled the air around them. "I won't abandon my duties," Aelith continued, staring intently at the screen of her tablet as if willing it to understand her resolve better than words ever could. "I will not return to Doreen now." Daniel watched silently for a moment before speaking up softly, his voice barely above a whisper in the noisy room around them. "Do you need anything from me?" "No," she replied immediately, but softened with another look at him. "I do though just be here when they come back to me about this plan." Her eyes flickered briefly toward where a young couple was arguing loudly near the cafe's entrance. Her ears were picking up their thoughts and emotions, causing her face to pinch slightly in discomfort. Daniel nodded again, understanding that Aelith needed him just as he needed her. The corner of his mouth turned upward, ever so subtly, in an acknowledgement before returning back to a quiet neutrality. "I will," he said simply. For weeks after this initial conversation, Daniel and Aelith met often at the same spot within their cozy cafe corner, but now it was filled with hushed tones rather than silence, Aelith speaking out loud about her negotiations, despite how exhausting it made them both feel. There were days when she would arrive looking frazzled, or even visibly shaken by arguments back home that threatened to pull her away from Earth entirely. There were other days where excitement shone through, as if the stars themselves lit up every silver speck of light in her eyes, hope flickering brightly within those thoughts. "Daniel?" Aelith asked one afternoon when she finally emerged with news after a long morning spent arguing and negotiating with officials on Doreen. "They are not happy," she admitted softly, as they took their usual seats near the back corner, where fewer students gathered nowadays due to finals week stress dominating most people's minds. He nodded quietly in response, understanding that this was far from an easy task for her, but also knowing how much it meant to Aelith, who had found rare moments of peace and quiet within his company despite all the noise surrounding them elsewhere. "What now?" he asked gently. "I told them I wouldn't come back," she said resolutely before pausing, looking down at her hands, then up into Daniel's face again with a smile that held more than just pride, but also gratitude for someone who never pushed when they needed to be alone and waited patiently until Aelith felt ready. "They've given me weeks to think about it, to see if what I'm asking is reasonable." Daniel squeezed her hand briefly in reassurance, his eyes meeting hers warmly despite the tension building around them both due to the impending decision she faced. Weeks turned into days, and then finally ended one crisp autumn evening where golden leaves scattered gently from trees outside like painted strokes against an otherwise drab brown backdrop of approaching winter. The cafe was bustling as usual during this time of year, with students poring over final assignments, coffee mugs steaming amidst the chatter floating lazily across tables filled with papers and books. Aelith arrived early that day looking less frazzled than she had in weeks thanks to Daniel's consistent support through what felt like an endless negotiation period. "They said yes," Aelith announced quietly once they sat down together, her eyes sparkling brighter even under the dim lights of their corner, as if victory itself shone within them. Daniel smiled softly at this news, feeling a weight lifted off his own shoulders too, despite knowing that Aelith's path ahead still carried many challenges. "I'm glad," he said genuinely before leaning in closer to whisper conspiratorially, "So what now?" Aelith laughed lightly but with genuine happiness dancing across her features, then leaned back into the booth beside him, gazing around at their quiet corner where everything felt different yet somehow exactly as it should be despite how much had changed between them and within themselves individually over recent months. I found something rare, she said thoughtfully, aloud now rather than telepathically to herself, and am not losing it for politics. Daniel nodded quietly, his smile gentle, but full of understanding for all the unseen battles Aelith fought against invisible forces crowding in around them from both worlds they bridged together. They waited there until dusk fell completely outside, wrapping their corner within shadows made warmer by soft lights flickering overhead, while silence reigned supreme between just these two amidst surrounding noise of exams and papers, due dates creeping ever closer for everyone else present. When finally the moment arrived where Daniel couldn't wait any longer to ask out loud what had been lingering unspoken all day, "Are you staying?" Aelith nodded without hesitation, her eyes locking onto his with unwavering resolve. "I'm staying," she confirmed firmly. Then Daniel did something unexpected, pulled back slightly from the booth, and gestured toward it invitingly, but also pointedly, at their usual spot by the window framed in light streaming softly through golden leaves hanging heavy outside. "Then sit," he said simply yet meaningfully, offering her this momentous decision with nothing more than an invitation to reclaim what had become a refuge for both of them amidst overwhelming duties and responsibilities elsewhere. Aelith looked down briefly at him, then back up again where his gentle smile remained waiting expectantly, but without pressure. She took another breath, steadying herself against the enormity before her while also grounding firmly within this moment with Daniel beside her. And slowly she stepped forward out of shadowed corner light into softer circle illuminated by windows outside, and met Daniel halfway. He reached up to take one hand in his gently but supportive, no squeezing necessary here, just a promise exchanged quietly between them through simple act conveying everything needed despite words falling short sometimes when faced against grander scope reality demanded, yet somehow finding peace within their own small corner nonetheless. Together they sat, quiet and unassuming amidst bustling university life swirling outside around them. But inside this space, carved out from world beyond, lay sanctuary found by two souls amidst overwhelming duties, where rare moments of true connection shone brightly despite challenges looming ahead, uncertain whether paths chosen would lead towards greater understanding or deeper divisions splitting worlds apart amidst complex webs governance already strained severely. The princess who heard everyone had finally found home in the silence of one